901 is to educate voters around the candidates and the issues that are on the ballot. To that end, we sent all of the candidates that participate in our forums a questionnaire, and those will be posted on our website after the forum is over. So if you'd like to know or read about what your candidates think, feel free to look at their questionnaires after we've posted them. As we've seen, elections have consequences, and as Ms. Freeman alliterated to or mentioned, we need to pay attention to the candidates, to the issues that we care about, and once we have elected those people, we do need to hold them accountable. Our next forum is going to be this Thursday, same time, same place. It will be a law and justice forum, and we'll have the sheriffs out, and we'll have some of the judge candidates out for you to observe. And we also handed out some questionnaires at the beginning. In just a few minutes, if you have completed those, you can pass them down to the outside aisles. We'll come by and we'll pick those up. And with no further ado, we'll have Ms. Malone come and introduce our moderator for this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out and participating in our Shelby County Mayoral Forum. The gentleman up here, one of them will have the job that I wanted 4 years ago. And very pleased with the caliber of candidates that we have for this top executive position for this county. And so we ask you to listen intently, pay attention to their responses, and we look forward to you voting in this upcoming election. I have the privilege of introducing tonight the moderator for this forum, Dr. Karanja Ajanaku. You know him. You've read his work in the Commercial Appeal back in the day. He was a city reporter. He was an editor for the Commercial Appeal, and then he went to the other side to help lead the editorial process for the new Tri-State Defender. And if you are not reading the Tri-State Defender today, you need to. I mean, he has done a phenomenal job as the associate publisher of the new Tri-State Defender. He will lead the candidates in all of the questions tonight, and Ian is sitting on the first row, and he will time all of the responses. Thank you so much for coming out. Dr. Ajanaku, you have the floor.
Okay. Well, how's everybody doing? I can truly tell you I didn't get up this morning with the idea that I was going to be moderating a debate at 6 o'clock. But stuff happens, and you make do, and often when you make do, you do better than what it is that you had planned to do in the first place. That is actually going to be my goal. We're looking for these gentlemen here to be responsive to the questions. We're going to try to be timely and leave room as necessary for questions from the audience. We're going to start with opening statements, and each person gets 2 minutes for their opening statement. We'll just start with my left. Here's Mr. Harris.
All right, thank you very much. I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks to all of you for being here on a Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Thanks to the NAACP for all that it does. I greatly admire this organization, and its work speaks for itself. Even just in the last few days, there was an effort by the Shelby County Election Commission to limit voting sites for the first 4 days to the outer parts of our county only. And the NAACP stepped in, stood up, and fought to make sure that there were voting sites in the center of our county. That makes sense. That means that hundreds of thousands of people will have an easier time getting the vote during those first 4 days of early voting. I'm Lee Harris. I have served in elected office for the last 7 years, 3 years on the Memphis City Council, 4 years in the state Senate, and across that 7 years of public service, I have always shown that I work extremely hard and I can work with anyone. The 2017 legislative year is as good of an example as any. I passed more bills into law than any other Democrat there, and most of the bills that I passed into law were either sponsored or co-sponsored by Republicans. I believe the biggest issue in our county right now is the issue of poverty. We have just witnessed the 50th anniversary of the King assassination here at this museum, and some of the indications are we have not made enough progress fast enough. Over the course of the last 50 years, according to what the Commercial Appeal has reported, unemployment in this county has gone up. Over the course of the last 50 years in this county, incomes have gone down. This is why I am running for county mayor. This is the conversation that is long overdue. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Lee. David?
Good evening. I am David Lenore, and I would be honored to be your next Shelby County Mayor. Let me first of all say thanks to the NAACP for hosting us this evening, for Ms. Freeman and Ms. Terry and Dr. Ajanaku. Thank you for adjusting your calendar. Let me just say, when it comes to this forum, that I did not have any problem with agreeing to a forum. Mr. Harris and I have a number of forums scheduled. We have one next week. We have several, I believe, next week. I did not have a problem and actually was looking forward to the forum here at the NAACP. I was aware when the previous moderator was selected. However, when I became aware of biased public statements after her selection as a moderator, I went to the NAACP and asked that they change the moderator. I don't mind having a debate and a difficult conversation, but I want to do it where it is objective, and that's all my request was. So again, I appreciate the NAACP for making that change and honoring that request. You did not have to, and you did, and for that I am grateful. As I travel around this county, as I've done for many years, but particularly the last 8 years as the banker for Shelby County, everywhere I go, folks want two things. Regardless of what you look like, regardless of where you work, where you live, you want safe neighborhoods, and you'd love to have a little more money in your pocket. And for us to do that, we have to have great schools and great job opportunities. You've seen me as your county's banker for the last 8 years and the work that we've done in the community and the things that we've done in the community. You know who I am. I look forward to having the conversation tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into the question segment of the evening. I have a set of questions here from the National Association of Health Services Executives. I have a set of questions here from the BBA and a set of questions from the Memphis NAACP. I'm going to switch the order just a little bit probably and start here with the questions from the BBA. But let me just say this, since we've already addressed the two elephants in the room, but just to amplify on one of the elephants, when I first got this offer to step in as the moderator, I said no. I didn't think it was a good idea. The way that we were making the adjustment. But I made the adjustment in order to be responsive to Ms. Malone, and after hearing that the previous moderator thought that it was good for the forum to go forward, and I think it's good for us to have as many forums as necessary and that we can get to be able to address the issues of the day. So now we got all the elephants out there. Let's go ahead and deal with the questions here. So BBA questions. Number one, we're going to start with Mr. Lenore. In light of the recent disparity study conducted for Shelby County government, what specific actions will your administration take in the first 90 days to remedy past practices of discrimination and promote economic justice, or what some now call diversity and inclusion, particularly as it relates to the letting of Shelby County contracts?
Well, thank you. As I said in my opening statement, we have to grow our economy here in Shelby County. I'm not talking about fighting over a pie that's this big. I'm talking about a pie that grows. And for us to grow our economy, we need to do more business with women and minorities. I was talking to a group earlier today, predominantly African Americans. I said, this county looks more like you than it does like me. And we need to have more minority business in our community. So one of the first things I would do in terms of the administration is hire someone in the purchasing area that understands that we need to do that. We need to do that. The other thing I would do is sit down with Ms. Booker at the MMBC, and we would evaluate capacity. There's mechanical contractor companies here, Gibson Mechanical Contracting. There's architectural firms like Self Tucker and others that have capacity. And we need to fill up all the capacity that we can with those organizations. Case in point, as your trustee, we never had a relationship with Tri-State Bank. Never. It's the people's money. It's your money. Part of my responsibility as the banker for Shelby County is to invest your money. We started a relationship with Tri-State Bank. First time ever. Called the chairman of the board, Miss Lucy Shaw, and said, Lucy, I want to put money on deposit, taxpayer dollars on deposit. We started off with $5 million. Capacity was about $35 million. And at one point in time, we, Shelby County, were the largest depositor in Tri-State Bank. So it's not just things of what we're going to do, it's what we have done in our elected office. We have to grow our economy here in Shelby County. I've done it as your county's banker. I'd love the opportunity to do it as your county's mayor.
Hey, Lee.
So I think this is I think this is a really important issue and something that has bedeviled local government for a very long time. And one of the reasons is we've got to be watchful of the language, right? And you hear language around growth, and growth is important. But the problem is that growth is sometimes at the expense of the folks at the bottom. In other words, sometimes that growth still means we will continue inequality. So those at the top get wealthier, and those at the bottom get a little bit of wealth. That's growth. That is not what I am after. What I'm after is making sure that minorities get opportunity and that we build a middle class. Inequality is a problem that has plagued this community for way too long. And what you need in local government, if you're going to get anything like that done, is you need somebody in place who has some courage and some independence. And I'm not talking about independence from political party. I am a Democrat and a proud Democrat. But I have always tried to stand up to special interests, and I've always tried to show courage throughout my career in office. So I can remember times on the city council when we had landscaping contracts, and we had local companies. I had a company, Bean & Prince from Orange Mound, denied a landscaping contract. I said no, even though I stood alone, said no until we give Bean & Prince that landscaping contract. You've got to have that kind of courage. What happens all too often, because remember, I've served on the city council. I've seen this process inside and out, time and time again. What happens all too often is the usual players eat at the trough time and time and time again. And the reason why they eat at the trough is because they're the donors, they're the people that decide who's going to run for these offices, and they are in charge once these people win these offices. My campaign is not like that. I don't owe anybody any political favors. I don't have the insiders on my team. I don't have those 25 big business interests behind me. My campaign is powered by the people. That means I have the independence and the courage to make something happen. Thank you.
Okay. David, you have any rebuttal? Any rebuttal on that one?
Is it on? I got a green light. Hey, oh, okay. All right, very good. Took a second. Yeah, no, I would agree. It does take courage. I mean, that's why, again, I was the first trustee ever. Heard a lot about Bob Patterson. Think he was a good trustee. Heard a lot about Paul Matilla. But no trustee had ever had a relationship with Tri-State Bank. I did not need a group of folks or individuals to tell me it was the right thing to do. I serve on the pension board. The pension board. We need more local minority money managers managing pension money. We now have a local minority money manager managing pension money. I agree it takes courage, but it's courage that I have demonstrated and I have done. And I think what you're going to find is proven executive leadership experience versus ideas. Versus ideas. I have that experience. I've done it. and I'm willing to do it as your Shelby County Mayor.
Lee? Okay, all right. Let's go on to our next question. Let's start with you on this one, Lee. What is your specific plan to make sure that your administration reflects the diversity of Shelby County?
Great question. So my office in Nashville is majority minority, majority women. My campaign is majority women, and majority women. And so diversity in my administration is a must. If I come in, a lot of new people are going to come in. In fact, I think the number of new people that come into an administration like mine that doesn't have the same relationships of the past, is not concerned about the status quo, is going to be broadly reflective of the diversity of perspective and background that we see throughout our wider county. I don't have anybody that I have to bring in because they helped me do this or helped me do that. And I think that's the kind of person, right? That's the kind of record that you want go into these top jobs. So it'll be diverse because that's the way I have always organized my affairs. And it will be no different if I go into the top job in this county. Thank you.
Okay. David, what's your specific plan to make sure that your administration reflects the diversity of Shelby County?
Well, there and again, as your Shelby County banker, mine is diverse. It is diverse. My top people in my administration are women. 85% of my office are women, women of color within my office. So again, in terms of what I will do and what I have done, I have a diverse office that I work with in the trustee's office. I will continue to have a diverse office as your Shelby County Mayor. It's public record. Don't want to embarrass her, but my CAO is a woman who I advocated on her behalf because of the job that we've done in the trustee's office. Record surpluses, 7 of the 8 years, reduced the debt, funded more, invested more money in education than Shelby County's ever invested. She makes more than I do. I can't control my salary. I can control hers. She makes more money than I do. So I have a diverse office as your Shelby County trustee. I would have a diverse office as your Shelby County Mayor, and I'm willing to hire talent and pay for talent because it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Any counter? Any counter? Okay.
My only counter is, as far as I know, the trustee has not voted to reduce any debt, has not voted on any budget, has not voted on any surpluses, and has no role in any of that.
David?
There are 3 branches of government. There's an administrative and executive branch. There is a legislative branch, and there is a judicial branch. I understand my lane in the executive branch. I'm running to be the executive of Shelby County. I remind my staff, we've got great co-workers in the trustee's office. We are the grease that makes the governmental gears go. When our sheriff's department wants 30 new sheriff's officers to protect our children in schools, you got to have money. And we delivered the money. When we wanted to pay down the debt because of the surpluses, we delivered the money. When the schools came over and asked for money for pre-K education, we delivered the money. Thank you. When we decided to pay down the debt, we delivered the money. When we decided to reduce your tax rate, I've been your county trustee for 8 years. I've never had anybody come into my office and say, I don't pay enough in taxes. So we've reduced your tax rate. The tax rate that was approved yesterday is lower than the tax rate when I started 8 years ago. So we've reduced your debt, we've increased our funding for education, and we've cut your taxes. When I talk about we need public safety, and we need more money in your pocket, and we need to grow our economy, I'd much rather have more money in your pocket than taking money out of your pocket.
Okay. All right, let's switch to jobs here. Again, sticking with the BBA. David, what are your specific plans for recruiting well-paying jobs to Shelby County?
Well, thank you. I'm glad we have that question because it is one of the cornerstones of my campaign. We have to have great education. 90% of our students in our school system are coming out of high school unprepared for college or careers. So one of the things that I advocate, and it's very different than my opponent, is I want to have an education liaison in the mayor's administration. We spend $400 million, a third of our budget, on education, and unfortunately 90% of our children are not prepared for college or a career. So this education liaison is going to work with Mr. Hobson. It's going to work with the 6 other superintendents and say, what is it that we need to do? How can we partner with you to provide the social and mentoring and the tutoring for our children? We have to get education right. We have to get education right, and I want to have this education liaison in the mayor's administration that reports directly to the mayor, to me, and says, we need great education. Number 2, you're right, we need great job opportunities. I spent 20 years in the private sector working with small businesses, electricians, auto mechanics, doctors, lawyers, teachers, pastors, helping them grow their wealth. And we've got to go out and recruit, retain, and reward. So if you're a small business owner and you're here, or a large business owner and you're here, thank you. Because human capital and financial capital is mobile. You could have made a choice where you wanted to live and where you wanted to start your business, and you did it here. So let me first of all say thank you for choosing Memphis and Shelby County. We're glad you're here. But we need more of you. We need more of you. We have 47 medical device companies here in Shelby County. We're number 2 in the nation in medical device companies. Number 1 in the nation is Warsaw, Indiana. They have more jobs than they have people. That to me seems like low-hanging fruit. Why don't we go out and recruit and approach medical device companies and bring more medical device companies here? I just got the time. Sorry.
Right. Lee, what are your specific plans for recruiting well-paying jobs to Shelby County?
So I agree with Mr. Lenore that there's no doubt about it, we have to make some major investments in education. So we know that the condition of our school buildings, for example, is a problem. We've got about $500 million in disrepair and deferred maintenance on our school buildings. That means we've got kids in classrooms where the heat doesn't work, and it's too hot or it's too cold, and they can't focus on learning, and teachers can't do their very best. We've talked for years in this community about pre-K, and it still seems just out of reach. So we've got to make sure that there's an early childhood education for every kid, regardless of income, that wants it. And we have to make sure that we return VOTEC to our schools. Right now we have more than 20,000 students that are taking career and job skills classes, but very few of them, fewer than 200, are actually graduating with a job certificate. So think of that. On the one hand, almost all of our kids graduate from high school not college ready, because 90% of them are not college ready. And then the other side is, and they are not getting the job skills they need to get a job. My dad is here tonight. He's an HVAC technician, certified. It is a good job and a way he has made a living. Why can't more of our kids learn HVAC or electrical or plumbing or carpentry? Unlike my opponent, I have a record on education. I've passed bills in Nashville to make sure we recruit teachers in math and science. I've passed bills in Nashville to make sure we recruit good school leaders to try to reduce our tuition in terms of education. On the city council, I supported pre-K. I didn't just wake up one day, roll out of bed, and start talking about education. I have been working and leading on this issue for years. For that reason, I've been endorsed by the teachers and Stand for Children. They've come together to say that I am the leader in terms of education in this community. Thank you.
Okay. David, you have a counter?
Sure, again, I mean, it's a matter of putting your money where your mouth is. And again, we've provided the money for pre-K. So this notion of just waking up one morning and thinking that education is important is kind of a daydream, if you will. Education is clearly important. This education liaison is the person that will be driving that conversation. I mentioned medical device a minute ago, 47 medical device companies. So they came together several years ago recognizing that there was a skilled workforce problem here in Shelby County. They didn't have the employees. So what you will see in the next year and a half is what I've called the Greater Memphis Medical Device Academy, in partnership with TCAT, that will begin providing the skills and the knowledge that's needed for those medical device. I want to talk about the $500,000 of deferred maintenance in our school system. No one in this room, on this stage, wants a child to go to school with a leaky roof or faulty windows or HVAC that doesn't work. But what we have to do is we have to make sure that there's more money going into the classroom and to our teachers. Less money has gone into the classroom. There's a middle school right now that's at 25% of its enrollment, of its capacity, where the school board has said we want to spend $4 million on new paint and new HVAC, when there's another middle school less than 5 miles away that can absorb that capacity. So before we ask you for $500 million to put new roofs and new HVAC on buildings that are at 25% of capacity, I would much rather work with our school administration and this education liaison so that we can combine those schools, cut our student-teacher ratios in half. Instead of 1 to 20, let's take it to 1 to 10. Let's put new roofs and new paint on those buildings. But spending $4 million on a building that's at 25% capacity, you wouldn't do it in your business.
All right, Lee.
So I think there's a big difference between my opponent and I on this point. I think we should invest in education because I think that is the way to move to the future. You look at Collierville. Collierville is building a huge new high school to the tune of $100 million. There are 8,700 students in the Collierville school system. Meanwhile, I talked to a commissioner from the school board for the Shelby County School District where there are 109,000 students. She tells me their entire school construction budget is $100 million. So $100 million in Collierville with 8,700 students, $100 million for Shelby County Schools for the school construction, 109,000 students. There is room to do a lot more investing in education in our community.
Let's look up the road to Nashville. Lee, how do you plan to influence Nashville, particularly state government, to acknowledge Shelby County with regard to the taxes that we pay and the amount of services and considerations we receive as the state's largest county?
So I'm the only candidate that has served at both the state and local level, and increasingly, experience at the state level is relevant if you are going to serve in a leadership capacity in this county. Just open a newspaper on any given day, and you'll see the impact that Nashville has and can have on this community. So I'm someone who worked hard up there and has great relationships with virtually everybody in the state Senate. That means that when we have a legislative agenda from Shelby County government, I know how to put muscle behind that legislative agenda and get some things done. There's a whole lot we could get out of Nashville if we knew how to navigate it. We don't right now. The city government puts out a legislative agenda and the county puts out one. They both hire lobbyists and they don't get anything done, right? We could, but you got to know how to navigate Nashville. You got to have those relationships. I think I could get stuff done there. Thank you.
David, how do you plan
Sure.
to influence Nashville to acknowledge Shelby County with regard to the taxes we pay, the amount of services and considerations we receive as the state's largest county?
Sure. Mine again? Yeah. Well, let me just say this. I'm the only candidate in this election that has finished every term that he has been elected to. I was elected in 2010. I was reelected in 2014. And if elected in 2018 as your Shelby County mayor, I will finish my term as your Shelby County mayor. As far as Nashville is concerned, I have a great relationship. I've served 8 years. I've served as the legislative liaison for the Tennessee Statewide Trustees Association. We've worked with the city of Memphis Mayor Strickland, on a number of blight initiatives to change legislation in Nashville. I have a great relationship in Shelby County, in Nashville. But again, I'm running on the executive, administrative side of government, not on the legislative side of government. Is it important that we have good policymakers and good legislative folks on our staff and hear from the people in terms of the things? And yes, that's exactly what we've done as it's related to blight initiatives. We have a workshop, we call it a real estate roadshow, where we've talked about the redemption period. We needed to go to Nashville and change the redemption period. That was from you, the people, giving us feedback of what is working and what is not working. Again, I'm fortunate to have served 8 years, 2 full terms as your Shelby County trustee. I've had great relationships up in Nashville, and I would continue those relationships if elected as your Shelby County mayor.
Okay. Lee, any comment?
I served for 3 years on the Memphis City Council, and I ran for state senate because I was not satisfied with the performance of the incumbent, and nobody else would run against her. And the incumbent was Ophelia Ford at that time, and God bless her heart, she was not doing a good enough job at that time, and I ran against her because it needed to be done. In the state senate, I'm in my 4th and final year in the state senate, and I'm giving up my seat so that more talent can come through the door, because that's important. In my view, in our community, the problem is not that our politicians don't stay long enough. It is that they stay too long.
David, any counter? You're the counter.
I'm extremely proud of the record
good.
that I put up. I'm honored to have been elected in 2010, and in 2014 I was reelected because of the results and the record that I've done as your Shelby County trustee. I'm proud of the fact that we, as a county, are in a better place financially. Our debt is reduced. Our savings account is up. Our tax rate is now, again, lower than it's been. And in that entire time, as an executive who understands how to run an operation, we did that at the same time, reducing our position count 25%. So what we're talking about is running an organization that has a $1.3 billion budget with thousands of employees, and talking about somebody who has never run an operation. Never run an operation. And so I'm proud of the work that we've done in the last 8 years, and I would ask for your vote as your Shelby County mayor.
Okay. What 2 or 3 measures will you undertake in the first 30 days of your administration to significantly impact the crime in Shelby County? I think that's on you.
So I'm not going to make any broad promises of what you do in the first 30 days. That's irresponsible. You've got to be in that seat. But I can tell you some low-hanging fruit, low-hanging areas where you could make immediate gains. One way to make sure that you prevent crime is to invest in people and make sure they have more meaningful opportunity. And one easy way to do that is invest in public transit. So the county... Historically, the county has not invested in public transit, and that is the easiest way to make sure people can get to an interview, can keep a job, can visit relatives, and stay out of trouble, frankly. If they can get around, then they can keep a job. And it is low-hanging fruit. It is one of the easiest things we could do immediately to empower people and make sure they have meaningful opportunity to succeed.
Okay.
Well, I can't stress to you enough the importance of education and the role of this education liaison that will play in my administration as your Shelby County mayor. The best crime prevention tool is job creation. The most dangerous person in the world is a person with no hope. Long-term hopelessness is tied to long-term unemployment. If we can get education right, and we have to get education right, we can address the economic opportunities that exist within our community. I have said many times, and I'll say it many more times, we have to look at crime and public safety through the lens of education and economic development. We can't continue to send our children through the juvenile system. I'm a fan of the Juvenile Assessment Center for young kids who commit nonviolent crimes. They don't need to go down to juvenile court. They need to go to a juvenile assessment center and stay out of the system altogether. As it relates to violent crimes, my opponent is soft on violent crimes. He voted against a bill in Nashville that would toughen the sentencing for criminals with guns. He wrote legislation that would reverse Representative Lois DeBerry's drugs around our schools bill. And so as it relates to crime, hold us accountable for our records and what we've done. But in my opinion, The best thing we can do in terms of addressing crime is invest in education and economic development and opportunity for our community.
Lee?
I'll only say it's easy to criticize my record of leadership because I have a record of leadership. So I have been on the forefront when it comes to public safety issue, to criminal justice reform, to education, to every issue that we have talked about so far for the last 7 years. When it comes to criminal justice reform, it is true that I am in favor of criminal justice reform. I think one of the bill he's talking about is a bill that says you should get 10 years in prison for illegal possession of a firearm. That targets non-violent offenders. I would rather use those resources to put in prison the rapists, the murderers, and let's stop giving these domestic abusers slaps on the wrist. So again, I am in favor of making sure that we target our resources for the violent offenders, not the nonviolent ones. Thank you.
Okay. All right. What is your plan to reduce, this is for you, David, what is your plan to reduce the outflow of citizens from Shelby County? What are your plans to make Shelby County a residential designation?
Yeah, well, again, I think the buzzword back in 2010 was that folks had voted with their taillights. Folks had left the city of Memphis, moved to the suburbs. Unfortunately, many of those left the suburbs and moved to the surrounding counties, recognizing that the educational outcomes, 90% of our students weren't graduating college or career ready. The crime rate that exists in our community because criminals with guns are out with guns and they don't feel safe in our community. So we have to focus on education. We have to, in my world, in the investment business, we would call it return on your investment. You are shareholders in Shelby County. We spend $400 million on education, and we need to give you a better return on your investment. I think some of that exodus that occurred was because folks felt like we have the highest property tax in the entire state. That's undisputed. We have the highest property tax. So why am I paying so much in property tax, and the educational outcomes of our schools and the crime that exists within our community? So one, we have to create a culture that is friendly where you want to plant and grow and your business wants to plant and grow. I would agree. We also need to address the transportation issue. I sat down with the CEO at NAACP recently. The city of Memphis, I'm running for Shelby County mayor, not the city of Memphis mayor. I've worked with all those suburban and municipal mayors for 8 years because we have relationships with every one of the cities inside of Shelby County. NAACP is a city of Memphis issue. And I sat down with the CEO at NAACP. And NAACP is going through a complete re-optimization of their bus routes. Unfortunately, there's been some turnover at the top. We need to make sure that we can get people where they need to go in the most efficient and practical way possibly. And if it's needed that the county needs to kick in some money for NAACP, I'd be willing to have that conversation on that investment. But again, in terms of putting more money in your pocket versus taking more money out of your pocket, we need $500 million for schools. Now we need more for NAACP. I'm sure at some point in time we're going to talk about Regional 1 and the $300 million need that's over there. And we have the highest tax rate in the state. So before we have that conversation, I believe in stewardship, that we need to be good stewards of your tax dollars, and that's what I've demonstrated for 8 years as your county's banker.
Okay. Lee?
Maybe we have the highest taxes in the state, but we also have the highest poverty in the state. And at some point, we're going to have to address that. This is a huge divide between my Republican opponent and yours truly. The Republicans will argue time and time again that tax cuts are the way to get people to move into the city of Memphis or into Shelby County. That has not happened. We have seen what that has led to. It has led to cuts in local government and our services. It has led to increases in crime, and has led to a shrinking of our county. On the other hand, imagine if we decided to make investments in our neighborhoods. Imagine if we decided to make investments in education. That's what people are looking for when they're making a decision about where to live. Quality of life matters. Neighborhoods matters. Remediating blight matters. That's what they're looking for. Amazon recently considered a move to our community. No one here thinks they were serious about moving here. They weren't serious about moving here because we're not investing in this community. We're not investing in our neighborhoods, and we're not investing in education. Thank you.
Okay. Let's transition to a series of questions from the National Association of Health Services Executives. What do you see as the biggest health disparity in Shelby County? What needs to be addressed most urgently? And what do you see as the county's role in addressing it? I think that question starts with David first. Okay.
Well, yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. There's no doubt there's linkage between poverty and healthcare. And poverty is an enormous issue. 8 years as the county's banker, we've worked on financial education initiatives, trying to help people get in a better place financially. Transportation is an issue within our community. As far as healthcare, the opioid crisis is an issue within our community. Meeting with Dr. Coopwood and Ms. Towns over at Regional 1. Just healthcare knowledge, if you will. Many of the people that come to Regional 1 are coming for common colds and are going to the emergency room. So we need more healthcare awareness and healthcare education in our community. When we talk about the price tag in Shelby County related to Regional 1, we need to better educate our community in terms of the resources that are available.
Lee?
So one of the biggest issues is something that I have led on at the state for a few years, and that is we need to expand Medicaid to make sure that more folks have access to health care. And this is a place where I agree with Mark Luttrell. Mark Luttrell is the incumbent, and Mark Luttrell has been supportive of efforts to expand Medicaid, also known as Obamacare, in his role as county mayor. And I would continue to push the legislature to take those, draw down those federal resources to make sure more people have access to health care, to make sure the med is open and stable. That's another thing we got to keep in mind. That's a difference, right? When my opponent or others talk about tax cuts, there's not a lot of places to cut taxes except for the charitable care, and maybe a few others that I can't think of, but charitable care jumps out, that is distributed every year from the county to Regional 1 to make sure that there is more care available. It's about $20+ million. We have to make sure that that distribution continues and that people have access to care. Opioids is another issue I've worked on to make sure that people report opioid overdose and so that people don't die. Thank you. Out of time.
Right. David, any counter?
Again, I would just say, as far as spending your money, $300 million towards Regional 1, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I'm saying what we ought to do is ask difficult questions. Why not go out and hire a healthcare consultant and begin with the question that says, what does 21st century healthcare look like? How can we deliver better healthcare into the communities? If transportation is an issue, then why not have healthcare facilities within the neighborhoods that are robust and meaningful, that actually deliver real care? You're talking about $500 million for schools, $300 million for Regional 1, and all I'm saying is it begs the question that before we ask you for more money, is that the right spend that we need to make?
Lee, anything else?
I just don't want to be caricatured as some big spender, because certainly on the Memphis City Council, I never voted for a tax increase. I haven't voted for a tax increase in the legislature. In fact, on the City Council, I was one of the ones that tried to hold the line on fee increases. I'm as frugal as anyone. When I'm in Nashville, I sleep in my office so that I don't have to pay for a hotel. I drive a car that has over 200,000 miles on it. So I am a frugal and careful spender, and I don't want to be caricatured. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Lee, this question's for you first. Domestic violence, child abuse, and murder are recognized as global health issues. All contribute to our crime rate. What policies or programs would you enact to prevent or curtail those acts of violence?
Well, again, I think we have incredible resources.
I said Lee.
Oh,
It was child abuse, and what was the other one?
Domestic violence, child abuse, and murder.
So we have real problems in terms of domestic violence. Domestic violence is the #1 call for most of our law enforcement agencies. And we, in my view, are not being tough enough on offenders. And so we have got to push for tougher penalties on domestic violence abusers. So my opponent a moment ago talked about nonviolent offenders that are found with a gun under their mattress, not going to commit a crime, or a gun in their car and getting 10 years. Almost no domestic violent offenders gets any time. And so we've got to have a mayor, when it's time to put together a legislative agenda, gets tough on those violent offenders, people that will put their hands on a woman, because that's what it is in most cases. We shouldn't give them a slap on the wrist. The same thing is true with child abusers, and I have worked on that issue at the legislature to make sure that we put away child abusers for as long as possible. Advocated bill after bill after bill to make sure we ramp up the penalties on those abusers. But again, if we're going to do this, we've got to have smart criminal justice reform, which makes sure that we don't lock up and spend all our resources on the nonviolent folks who are possessed drugs or are found, with, like I say, with a gun under their mattress. Thank you.
David.
We do need to separate crime into nonviolent crime and violent crime. I think it's interesting to hear my opponent say that he's now tough on violent crime when that's not what his voting record indicates, when he's had an opportunity to vote on violent crime. Yes, we need the Juvenile Assessment Center. Yes, we need the Family Safety Center. We need to partner with our faith-based community and intervene and provide education and workshops, if you will, for the community as it relates to domestic violence and crime. But we have to separate between nonviolent crime and violent crime that exists within our community. Yes, we need to be tough on violent crime. I'm glad to have the Sheriff Deputies Association endorsement. I'm glad to have the Memphis Police Association's endorsement, because they understand my position on crime and they understand my opponent's position on crime as well.
Lee? Okay. All right. Access to care often means providing citizens with affordable care, but for many, access also means transportation to a health care provider, the grocery store, or a job. While it's undeniable that access to transportation can affect health, how would you ensure access to transportation is responsive to community needs? I believe David starts with this one, right?
Yeah, again, I think I touched on that earlier as far as transportation. I sat down with Gary Rosenfeld at MATA. MATA is going through an entire reoptimization of their routes. One of the biggest challenges is the last mile of getting folks to their home. And so we need to continue to work on improving the transportation for the critical resources that exist within our community, whether it's getting to work, whether it's getting to the doctor, getting to the grocery store, whatever the case may be. Transportation is a vital issue that is actually being addressed and looked at right now with MATA.
Okay. Lee, any comment?
So I've said it already that I'm supportive of making investments in public transit. I think it is important for job purposes, but also to have access to health care. I think it's one of our most important organizations in town. We think about the public assets we have, we think that are really cherished. We think about the Memphis Zoo that has 500,000 people that visit the Memphis Zoo every year. We think about, 1 million people visit the Memphis Zoo every year. We think about Graceland, 500,000 people visit Graceland. And we gave Graceland $100 million. Right? We think about Bill Street. And 5 million people visit Bill Street every year. But public transit, 7.2 million riders every single year. It is the most broadly impactful organization in our town after the schools. And we should treat it as such. So that means we should make, if we're going to change lives, the easiest way to change a lot of lives really fast is invest in education and invest in public transit.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to take a break. 5 minutes worth, and we'll be back. Okay.
If anyone has any outstanding questions, we'll be around to pick those up during this time. We'll also have a few words from our co-partners.
Good afternoon. I am Shara Stewart Abrams. I'm the Memphis chapter president of the National Association for Health Services Executives. And NAACP was actually founded in 1968, and its sole purpose was to actually encourage and create opportunities for minority healthcare administrators. And we all know in 1968 what the culture was. So there was a need for healthcare administrators to look like the patients that were actually in the hospitals. As the country becomes more and more racially and ethnically diverse, the healthcare system can optimize healthcare goals by having a workforce and leadership that is representative of the general population. We are happy as a partner to partner with the Civil Rights Museum and the NAACP, and are thankful that the candidates offered their comments regarding how they would approach our healthcare issues. So we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vicki Terry, and I am the Executive Director of the Memphis Branch NAACP. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for coming out this evening, joining in with us on this forum. I wanted to thank our candidates as well. Lee and David, thank you so much. And Dr. Janaku, thank you so much for agreeing to do this for us at the last minute. I wanted to see if Latrivia, wave your hand. Latrivia and Deidre, anybody else? Lavarsky, come tell me your name. Now you know Travarsky. I just met him, you all, a couple of weeks ago, so forgive me, but they are part of our VIP 901 committee. And we are so excited about our forums, what we are trying to do, educate the public on the candidates and voting and everything else that you all need to know. And please come out on Thursday night to the Law and Justice. Phyllis, is that right? Phyllis and Ian are talking, but Phyllis is so excited about the Law and Justice part on Thursday night. I do want to say, if there are any other candidates here, if you could just stand for a second and be recognized. Anybody that's running? Thank you so much for coming out. And we're planning other forums as well, so you all will be contacted. If you left your name signed in, please let me know who you are. Stop by and shake my hand and tell me who you are, and we will be in contact with you as well. Phyllis, you're going to do it at the end, right? Okay. Thank you again, and we appreciate you.
What are you planning to do? All right, let's go. All right, I think that's enough breathing. Let's move forward here. Let's transition to the questions from the Memphis NAACP. All right, I believe we're starting with you here now. Would you continue to support the Memphis and Shelby County Office of Reentry?
Yes, no doubt about it. In fact, that's where we need to make some improvement. So I visited the Office of Reentry. I've talked at length with the leader of that organization. I've worked on reentry in Nashville, worked on that issue for many years and have a record in terms of reentry. That's the important part, right there. Public safety is many parts. It's the arrest and prosecution. It's the investment and prevention on the front end. And it's also the back end, reentry. And so the county really doesn't play much role in the arrest prosecution side of things. It plays a bigger role on the prevention side, which is investments in education, and the reentry side. because there's a shared Memphis-Shelby County Office of Reentry, and the county more or less manages that office. Right now, we do not see enough activity in that office. I've talked to the caseworkers there, and from what I could glean, they have way too much volume and are not putting enough into each one of those cases. If we had a little bit more in that office, we can make sure that those who return from prison get more opportunity and don't recidivate. That's the critical piece. Thank you.
Okay. David, would you continue to support the Memphis and Shelby County Office of Reentry?
Yes, I would, and I guess my opponent just woke up one day and decided that reentry was important, because when he was on the city council, there was a $260,000 ask for a second chance program that he voted against. So I guess now he's for it when he was against it. The Office of Reentry is an important office within the county in terms of getting folks re-engaged and into the workforce. There's no doubt about it. We need to work sooner and earlier in our corrections facility. As the Shelby County Mayor, the corrections is part of the mayor's administration. I've sat down with the director of corrections. I've sat down with the nonprofit Hope Works. I've sat down with our career and technical colleges and says, what can we do more in preparation in our corrections facility before folks get out, so that when they come to the Office of Reentry, there's employers that are there that are available and the job skills are there so that someone can get a job. Once they're out is not the time to begin the work. First of all, we need to invest in education and try to prevent the pipeline. But then we need to work with our corrections facility earlier. As your Shelby County Mayor, I will do that. And as far as supporting the Office of Reentry, I will do that as well.
Lee?
I have a record of leadership, unlike my opponent, on this very issue. These are not just ideas. This is how I've conducted myself in office. These are the votes that I've taken, the actions and initiatives that I have begun in order to make sure that people can get more meaningful opportunity when they return from prison. DeAndre Brown, who many of you know, leads a very successful organization, Lifeline to Success. What I remember from my city council service was bringing DeAndre Brown down to the Memphis City Council and initiating a grant for what he did. What I've done in the state senate is the same sort of approach, is to make sure that folks that return from prison have opportunity to get a job. I passed a bill recently that said that they should be, that courts could give a certificate of employability. And a certificate of employability, and this was on a bipartisan basis, I worked a lot with Brian Kelsey and Dwayne Thompson. What a certificate of employability says, it says that if you take a risk and hire an ex-con, you won't be liable if anything should happen. Because a lot of employers complain to us that they won't hire because they're afraid there's some liability around hiring somebody who has a record. So we've got to make sure that we do what we can where we sit to get jobs for some of these ex-offenders, and that's what I have done. I'm not just talking about it or thinking up ideas today.
Nor am I. I know DeAndre. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with DeAndre. When the storm hit in Frazier on Memorial Day, I loaded up my car, I loaded up my tractor, I loaded up my chainsaw, and I worked shoulder to shoulder with DeAndre Brown in the Frazier community when the storm hit and there were trees everywhere. I know DeAndre. He does great work. I'm glad to call him a friend. But these are not dreams and things that I just thought up. It's blood, sweat, and tears that I have invested into the community. I'm curious why my opponent voted against the $260,000 for second chance, for reentry. I know DeAndre. Like I said, I've worked shoulder to shoulder with him. I've been there. I've been in the neighborhoods. I've cleaned up neighborhoods. And it's an important topic.
What are your opinions on bail reform in Shelby County? Lee?
Again, this is an issue where I have led and have a record and experience on the issue. This last legislative session, we had a report from the governor which had all sorts of ideas around criminal justice reform. I carried the piece of legislation that said we should not have bail on juveniles that would be released otherwise. That we should not have bail on juveniles that would not be released otherwise. So we pushed hard for that. That would have been a very good start. I worked the way I always work, in a careful manner, in bringing together people to build a coalition. worked with the Bail Bonds Association. They supported the bill to eliminate bail bonds for juveniles. Couldn't get our juvenile court judge on board this time around, and so we faced some challenges. But the point is that I believe in bail reform. I have a record on bail reform. I'm not just starting out at this. Thank you.
David.
Yeah, again, I've seen it. I've tasted it. I know what it's, I've experienced it. A young man that I met 15 years ago when I was at Manassas High School, unfortunately, was locked up for driving with a revoked and suspended license. And he was caught in a trap of a lot of money hanging over his head, about $2,000 for him to get out of jail. We need to look at it. We need to overhaul it. I'm for expungements in modernizing, if you will, how our criminal justice system works. So I'm appreciate the work that's gone on in the area of expungement and eliminating some of the hurdles that exist in the area of nonviolent crimes. Driving with a revoked or suspended license and owing $2,000 is not the way it should be. And we do need to overhaul much of the work and the hurdles and the barriers that are going on in our criminal justice system. There's no doubt.
Lee, anything else? Okay. This question is for David first. Given the state of immigration today, what is your stance on cooperation with ICE? And would you start a lawsuit to prevent cooperation with federal immigration or customs enforcement?
Well, I mean, ICE and our immigration is a federal issue, and the reality is it's broken. It's broken. So we have to start there, that our immigration system, because what we're talking about is illegal immigration. I know a lot of folks like to leave that word out, but what we're talking about is folks who are here illegally. And so as it relates working with ICE, that's a federal issue and not so much a local issue. I've talked to Mayor Luttrell. I don't know that Mayor Luttrell does not work on the immigration issue as our county mayor.
Okay. Lee, anything?
I think the federal government has lost a lot of credibility, and ordinarily I would say we should do as best we can to work with those federal officials. In this case, I think we've seen some troubling things on the news, and so at this point, I don't think we should voluntarily work with ICE. I think... Now, I do think that in large regard, those kinds of decisions are probably going to be with the sheriff's office. Right? The sheriff is the one that traditionally held prisoners for ICE to pick up. The sheriff's office has just changed that policy per county attorney opinion, and so that's good news. But the sheriff's office continues to, of course, report those individuals to ICE. And so we've got to have somebody, and we've got to have a county attorney in place with the kind of perspective that I think some of us all share. The other good point I'll point out here is another thing the county mayor does that's actually relevant here is the county mayor appoints the public defender. And so we need to expand the portfolio of responsibility of the public defender. It doesn't seem to me there's any reason why the public defender shouldn't, in some cases, defend immigrants regardless of whether or not they are here unlawfully. And so I would be looking for a public defender that shares my perspective. Thank you.
Okay. David in the counter. Okay. All right. These are questions that we're asking now from the audience. It says that today is the second anniversary of the bridge protests. Do you think it was valid or effective? Why or why not? Lee?
I'm one, I love when citizens engage. I love protests. One of the major things that I think is the problem in the city of Memphis is our community has been too passive for way too long, and citizens have just allowed things to continue and have been dumped on in their neighborhoods, in their schools, and all over. And so when citizens take action and they actually engage and demand that government bend to their will, it is probably a good thing. I can't recall every single detail of the bridge protest at this point because it was at least a couple years ago. But the point is that I think citizens should engage. I think citizens should protest. I think they should demand that government serve their interests. I've worked on this issue, right? This is another issue. One of the reasons why protests like that happen is because government controls some of the information around officer-involved shooting, the videos and other reports. We have more officer-involved shootings in this county than anywhere else in the state. According to the Commercial Appeal in its last report, we have almost 5 officer-involved shooting deaths per year in this county. That vastly outpaces every other place in the county. And so whether right or wrong, people are understandably suspicious when there's an officer-involved shooting death in this county. And so I worked with G.A. Hardaway in the Tennessee General Assembly to pass a bill to make sure that when there's an officer-involved shooting death, those reports held by government are finally released to the public. Those reports were kept confidential for many years. Suspicions about what happened in those officer-involved shooting deaths are what led to the bridge protests in the first place. And my response was to lead, to get something done. I am not new to this issue, and that's what I did in Nashville. Thank you.
Okay. David?
I'm certainly for protests. I mean, we're sitting in a very building that memorializes and personifies Dr. King and the protests. So we live in a great country where we have the ability to protest. As it relates to the bridge, I mean, the concern is with the bridge is that I-40 corridor. I mean, think about Regional 1 as our regional provider and a family who needed to get to Regional 1. I think as long as a protest is nonviolent, as long as a protest is civil, we ought to have protests. But when lives become in danger, I think that's where we have to really think about the protest. And,
All right, let's stay civil. All right, Lee, anything else? Okay. So there's several questions here that are related to the recent early voting flap. Okay, so I'm going to ask it this way. So the extremes seem to be much ado about nothing or voter suppression. Okay, so where do you stand? David?
in the first part, Dr. Janaku, about early voting and
Right. I said that the extremes are much ado about nothing or voter suppression. Where do you stand?
Well, I don't think it's much to do about nothing for sure. Our right to vote is one of the most sacred rights that we have in this nation, if not the most sacred right that we have in this nation. It's unfortunate that we have such poor turnout. In the May primaries, 14% of registered voters turned out. So I'm all for whatever we can do to get more people to the polls. When we did our financial education workshops, we actually had voter registration folks at our financial education workshops to help more folks get registered to vote. So as it relates to early voting and locations, I'm all for giving more people more access to vote.
Okay. Anything else, David? Lee?
I'm not going to question, why they did it, because I don't know, but I know the outcome was voter suppression, the outcome of what happened. So we got to remember just the basic facts. You set up 3 voting locations in the outer parts of our county. Hundreds of thousands of people live in the center parts of our county. And it's difficult for those folks who live in the center parts of our county. I live in the center part. It's difficult for us for those first 4 days to get to those outer parts. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense what happened. And it again speaks to our vulnerability and the inequality that exists in this community, that things like that happen and have to be addressed by going to court. We are vulnerable. We are vulnerable. And something has to happen. There has to be reform. You've got to have somebody with courage to go into some of these top jobs. I used to say, I don't know if I have time, I used to say things like this you'd expect to be addressed because you'd get your congressman, they just write a letter to the Justice Department, and the Justice Department would see, oh, this is easy. We'll write an email to the Shelby County Election Commission, and they'll change their practice. We can't trust that that'll happen anymore. If you write a letter to this Justice Department, we can't be sure that they would take action. So I'm just grateful for the folks at the NAACP, and also grateful for the folks at the Democratic Party. But this is not and Julie Byrd on the Democratic Party's behalf for arguing the case. This is not a partisan issue, though. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, doesn't matter if you're a Republican, doesn't matter if you're black or you're white or you live in the outer parts or in the center part like me. Everybody should have the same opportunity for those first 4 days to vote.
Okay. Does Memphis need an economic revolution? And if so, what is to be done with the economic development growth engine and pilots? Let's start with Lee.
So most of the folks may know I'm not the biggest fan of pilots. What I would advocate you do with EDGE is you've got to make sure that you have a board in place that is representative of the community. And sometimes I get the impression that the board is not representative of the public interest at large, right? So we have developers on the board, that's fine, and attorneys and bankers. I want a teacher. I want a nurse. That would be more broadly representative of the people at large, and the decisions of EDGE would have a lot more credibility. That's something I'd like to see. The other piece of the puzzle is EDGE has slowly but surely expanded its kind of tools. I think it'd be better practice for us to have what I would refer to as a neighborhood authority. So we can have an organization that is responsible for rebuilding and investing in our neighborhoods. Why can't we use incentives to make sure we bring a grocery store to South Memphis? So let's make sure we have a board in place at EDGE that makes sense, and it can continue to do its thing with respect to manufacturing jobs, even though that hasn't worked out so far. But let's also form a neighborhood authority that actually does the work of rebuilding our neighborhoods and improving the quality of life in our community.
David?
Well, as I said in my opening statement, as I've traveled around this county for 8 years, folks want to feel safe, and they want more money in their pocket. And the reality is we live in a competitive environment when it comes to economic development. My opponent stated earlier, we didn't get the Amazon opportunity. It went somewhere else. Every day, as I said earlier, financial capital and human capital are making decisions as to where they want to invest their capital. You can go just to the south, not far from here, to Mississippi, and they'll roll out the red carpet and they'll welcome you with open arms. And all those jobs will go down to North Mississippi, and they'll come and watch our Grizzlies games and go to Hattie Lou. And so the reality is we need economic incentives. Do they need to be more tailored and focused? I mentioned the medical device community, 47 medical device. Why don't we go out and target and attract medical device companies to come to Shelby County? We live in a great agricultural region. There's a tremendous amount going on in the area of agricultural technology. Why don't we go out and recruit more companies in the ag tech space? This corridor that we have, the I-40, I-55 corridor, is the second most traveled corridor in the entire nation. What can we do to bring in more companies here? So we need EDGE, and we need economic development, we need pilots. But we also need, instead of a shotgun approach, we need a rifle approach to say, what is it? What are the assets that we have here in Shelby County? And let me name two: our teachers and our law enforcement. What if we want to think outside of the box, what if we had a pilot for our school teachers? There's 3 ways I know how to put more money in your pocket. I can give you a raise, I can cut your expenses, or I can do both. I can't control teacher pay raises. Our school boards do that. But what if we rolled out a pilot to tell our teachers, thank you, and we discounted the property tax for those teachers? The second one I don't have time to talk about is for our law enforcement officials. Somebody that goes out and protects us every day. What if we rolled out a pilot for our law enforcement community?
Okay. Hold on. Wait, did you want to have a counter? Okay. All right. Healthcare question here. What role does the county mayor play in improving the mental health of the community? Hey.
So the county plays a role in healthcare. The county, of course, plays a leadership role with our only public hospital, Regional 1, formerly known as the Med. I've already talked about making sure that that hospital is open and stable. That means that you've got to continue the charitable care from county commission, from county government in favor of Regional 1. At the same time, the county county mayor is in charge of who leads the county health department. And so there is an area where we can make sure that we have in place the kind of mental health resources to respond to all the challenges. The other place where all this should also be housed is some of in our high-need schools. So we've got kids in a lot of areas that have a lot of different kinds of challenges. And a lot of those could be addressed in those schools. And so we need to deliver more support, more services inside those schools. And so some schools are going to need more counselors, and not just a high school guidance counselor, but also a mental health counselor. Some schools are going to need more nurses and healthcare practitioners. Some schools are going to need more after-school programming. The point is that we could deliver more wraparound services, more of a social safety net right in our schools right now. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, and I would add to that, I mean, also in our correctional facilities. I mean, yes, Regional 1 is our hospital here in Shelby County. And so Dr. Coopwood and the work that they do, yes, mental health needs to be a focus. Dr. Haushalter at the Shelby County Health Department, yes, there needs to be more focus on mental health out of our county health department. But we also need to focus on corrections, as I mentioned earlier, and we also need to reach out into the community. I've said many times that the heart of any great neighborhood is a great church. We ought to partner with the churches within our community and develop programs to address the mental health issues that exist in our community. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Here's a question from the audience. Do you believe that the local community should control the decisions regarding which historical figures should be honored in public places, or is that the proper responsibility of the state government? David?
I'm happy to tackle this one because local control, local decisions. The decision needs to be made at a local level. It was made at a local level. It was passed unanimously by the city council, and it was a decision that was made. And I'm glad I can clear the record because there's folks out there, it's politics, I get it, I understand, but you will not find me on record of saying that I thought it was a state issue. And so all the lies that are going on out there, they're just that, they're lies. It's a local decision, local control as far as the removal of those statues, and I think that's the way it should have happened.
Lee?
I also believe that it's a local issue and that the Memphis City Council and city government should have a right to remove the Confederate monuments. I personally agree at this point that those Confederate monuments had become divisive in our community and that they were rightfully taken down at this point in our community. In fact, when I was on the city council, people don't remember, but a long time ago, right, I led the charge to change the names of those Confederate parks. And so there was Myron Lowry and Walter Bailey and yours truly, and I ultimately wrote the ordinance or the resolution at that time to change the names of those parks because as I heard more about them, it was clear to me that the names and the monuments there were, at their core, dividing this community. And we have an urban county with a whole bunch of diversity. In fact, I'm on the mural out there. I think I'm the only elected official out there on that mural with all the other folks that have fought injustice, partly because of that fight. In addition, the fight around non-discrimination in city government, I led the charge. I led the charge to make sure there was not discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in city government. And so there are lots of ways that this community has been divided, and those monuments were just one example of that. And so, you know, I think we're in a better place as a more tolerant, more respectful of diversity right now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I've looked through most of these questions, and it seems to me we've covered most of these areas here. So I'm going to switch over and give you guys an opportunity to give your closing statements, 1 minute each. And let's start with David.
Well, very good. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. As I've said throughout this entire campaign, it has been a real honor to serve as the county's banker. We made tremendous progress in the last 8 years. There's no doubt there's more work to be done. But as I've traveled around this county, folks have said we need safer neighborhoods and we need a growing economy here in Shelby County. But more than that, we need a proven leader that has actually done it. I've spent 8 years as your county's banker. I have a track record in executive leadership. We have to focus on our schools. We have to focus on economic development and great jobs. And so, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. Thank you for coming out. Early voting starts on Friday, and I would ask for your vote as Shelby County Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the NAACP. Thanks to all of you for being here. I think we need a county mayor that represents all of us. I think we need a county mayor that can answer the hard questions. I think we need a county mayor that will go in front of any audience, even a diverse audience. That is the way I have lived my career, and that is the campaign that we are running. The campaign that we have builds on the diversity and the very best of the potential we see inside this county. In fact, this is a movement. It is powered by everyday citizens. We don't have any special interest groups behind us. We don't kowtow to insiders in our campaign, and we are not concerned about the status quo. So I would ask you to give me and our movement a look and some consideration. There are hundreds of folks that have gone online, for example, to leeharrisformayor.com and reviewed our platform. I'd encourage you to do the same. I need your support. I need your help. I'm running for county mayor, and I think it's time we change everything.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Luco, and I am so proud to be a member of the biggest, baddest, and boldest civil rights organization in the nation. I want to thank our candidates for coming, and I want to thank all of you for coming out today to hear our candidates speak. You know, it says a lot when candidates are willing to talk with you and not just at you. How many people learned at least one new thing about the candidates today? Okay. Great. Now, it's not just enough to increase the number of citizens who vote in every election. We must also increase the number of informed votes that are cast, and that is why we bring these candidate forums to our community. Our VIP campaign, which stands for Voting is Power, recognizes that everyone who exercises their right to vote is a community VIP, because in a democracy, voting is the prime expression of power. Every eligible citizen gets one vote to cast, no more, no less, regardless of wealth, social status, race, or gender. Thus, we all have an equal opportunity to influence our government. Everyone knows that it hasn't always been that way. And that's why it is so important that we don't allow our communities to be marginalized, because those in power assume that we don't and won't vote. Now, I think this is a good opportunity to introduce. We have a national NAACP board member in the House, the Reverend Gina Stewart. Reverend Stewart, would you please stand so everyone can see you? Thank you. Do we have any other national board members in the House? We have a few from the area. No? Okay. Well, I think this would also be a good opportunity. I know we asked for other elected officials to stand a little bit earlier in the program, but I don't think you really got a chance to introduce yourself. So if there are other elected officials here, would you please stand and take your name and tell your name and what position you currently hold? And if you are also running for a position, if you're on the ballot for the upcoming election, if you will tell what position you're running for as well. We'll start here to my left.
Okay, at the local level, I want to explain it real quickly. At the state level, it's a primary. At the county, you have the general, and then you have a city council. It's a general. It's the last election on the ballot. So please complete the whole thing.
Thank you.
My name is Jesse K. Jeff, and I'm running for State House District 86. And I'm here to talk about a new face, a new voice, and a new vision, the future of District 86. So when you see my name, I'm the guy with 3 first names, Jesse Kirk Jeff. Vote for me, you can't miss it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Haley, and I'm the Democratic candidate for County Commissioner in District 4. And I also agree very much with fighting poverty countywide and funding those public schools. I won't make a long statement, but I want to introduce myself, Kevin Haley, for District 4. Thank you.
My name is Sanjeev Mamula. I'm running for District 95 State Representative in Collierville, Germantown, and Eads. I'm running because I want to give everyone a voice, not just a few people. We need that in our country right now, so I'm running to do that in the county, in Collierville.
Good evening. My name is Torrey Harris, and I'm running for State Representative for District 90. District 90 covers a lot of Midtown, North Memphis, Frazier, South Memphis, a large territory, and I'm running for people, period. Wages for all people, education for all people, affordable and equitable transportation for everyone.
Good evening. My name is George Monger. I'm running for County Commission in District 13 as Democratic nominee. I've been heavily involved in Democratic politics since 18. 2007, I ran for City Council. I served 2 years on the County Election Commission, working to make sure we protected voter rights. In fact, in 2012, made sure we kept 3,000 folks registered and eligible to vote that were going to be illegally purged by partisan politics. And the three, to me, the critical things that we have to focus on, continue to focus on economic development for jobs and education. Thank you so much.
Can y'all hear me? I'm Commissioner Terry Rowland, and I want to thank y'all for letting me serve y'all for the last 8 years. It's been a pleasure, and don't think I'm going to be going anywhere. I'm going to still be around, and I want each and every one of y'all to know this from the bottom of my heart, that this old country boy loves the city. It loves the people in this city, and you're always first in my heart. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay. Did we get all of the elected officials? Oh, one more. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Chisholm. I am running for State Representative District 85, and we're fighting for health care, education, and economic development. So let's fight together, you all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mikhail Lowry, and I'll be on the ballot again for County Commission in District 8, which you're right in the heart of District 8. It also covers Frazier, parts of South Memphis, as well as downtown and Central Gardens. And listen, I'm running because I believe we need stronger neighborhoods and more affordable housing. I'm also chairman of the Memphis Housing Authority Board, so I'm passionate about seeing affordable housing for our citizens in Memphis. So make sure everyone you tell to vote. Thank you.
Chamber voice, I don't need this. You know me. I didn't come to politics. I did come to urge you to perform your civic duty. Get to the polls and vote. Become an informed and informed, educated voter, and make your choices based upon real facts. Okay? Don't be a one-source researcher, and get your information from real sources. So I urge you to get to the polls and vote for the candidate of your choice, and make sure you vote early. Everybody vote early. Thank you. Oh, and my apologies for leaving early, but I'm headed for Ron Lawler's wake, his visitation, and we would ask that you would extend your prayers to the family and the friends of my former colleague, Ron Lawler.
Can't hear you. She said, did we get all the candidates?
Are there any local NAACP executive committee members here? If you'll please stand and be recognized. Okay. Okay. Coleman Thompson, Chairman of Healthcare Committee. Deborah Davis, the Treasurer. I'm glad you all could hear her because I couldn't have repeated that. Anyway, and I'm Phyllis Aluko, also an executive board member.
AXO, let me say this, you all. Marion, stand just for one more second, okay? She is taking 5 of our youth, and they competed locally here, and they won. So they're going to represent Memphis, Tennessee. They're going up Thursday, so you all keep them in your prayers. They'll be gone almost a week. We're going to San Antonio, Texas. So we're going to come back with some gold medals. So you all keep them in your prayers and wish us the best of luck. I also want to say, before we close, how many of you all know what happened last night? We won, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just want you all to know that we won. And we are also have Mississippi Boulevard will be open for early voting. Okay, and also Ed Rice or another one in Frazier will be open. So we did get what we wanted, and early voting will be at all locations beginning Tuesday. So thank you all so much for your support. And Dr. Ajaniku? Okay, here we go. We got somebody else. Come on. Floyd Bonner just walked in.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I on? Okay. Yeah, my name is Floyd Bonner. I am a candidate for sheriff here in Shelby County, and I think I will be here Thursday. Okay, all right. I have to check with somebody that keeps up with my schedule. So I invite you all to come back and please hear what we have to say. Hey, Commissioner.
Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't want to leave anyone out. Is that it?
Okay. Well, he just took care of the last of my duties, but I am going to anyway go ahead and remind you that VIP 901 and our co-sponsors have one more candidate forum scheduled before early voting begins. It's going to be the same place, same time, different cast. We're calling it the Law and Justice Forum, and it will feature our judicial candidates, those in contested races, and our candidates for sheriff, as Mr. Bonner just said. So please come out to hear from our law and justice candidates this Thursday, July 12th at 6 p.m. And again, remember that early voting begins this Friday, July 13th. Vote early and bank your vote.
Thank you.